It's been a tense few weeks in Coronation Street recently, with Kelly and Corrie both in the dock for Seb's murder. Defending Kelly with nothing but his wits, a dashing wig and a belly full of veggie lasagna, it's Imran Habeeb, and I'm joined by the actor behind me today. It's Charlie de Melo. Charlie, welcome back to the podcast.
Thank you for having me.
That's all right.
That's an excellent introduction.
I know, I'm pleased with how that went. I just knocked that out just then.
Pretentious wig. I heard the last week's show.
Yeah, are you allowed to wig? You're not allowed to wig.
I was vindicated.
It looks great, whether it's allowed or not.
Yeah, it's a visual storytelling medium, and if it looks good, then it stays.
Exactly, and however hot it is.
Oh my god, yeah, we'll get to that.
Yeah, so right, let's talk about this big story then that's going on at the moment. Toyah and Imran had a bit of a quiet start to the first half of the year, didn't you? What was it like being thrown into this big story at such a climactic moment?
Oh, I mean, it's a gift, this story. It's been so well done by everybody involved from the very beginning, from the original episode back in May, I want to say, and throughout the kind of ongoing threads that are kept getting referenced with Sally Carman's work and Molly Gallagher's work and Millie and Max et al. And so to kind of come in to something that has been set up so well, it's like it's my it's my sort of ball to fumble, as it were, if that makes sense. Like, I've been given, not to sort of pardon the pun, but I have been given that open goal.
Yeah.
And so it's just been a joy to kind of step into something that's been so well set up, and particularly some of the directing flourishes that have been used recently. They've been something that I've been really loving seeing, because all of that stuff last Monday.
Yeah, that's right.
I wasn't involved in any of that. I'd heard whispers, I'd heard tell of that stuff, but to see that stuff on screen, like I've rewatched those closing moments of that Monday's episode a dozen times, probably at this stage. I think it's just brilliantly put together. The kind of the thud of Eli and Jay with Nina, they're obscured by the van, and Nina shuddering, and that just put like an ice pick down my spine. It's just like, it's so visceral, and like that's exactly what you kind of want from moments like that, for it to be like a feeling. Like, it's not something that I can even really kind of articulate all that well, but it's just that feeling of just so ice cold at the end of it in the best possible way. So it's so great to be involved in something like this, because it's not only meaningful in its own right, with the kind of support and involvement of the Sophie Lancaster fund, but also just in terms of it as a story sort of divorced from the real world implications. Like, I just think it's really, really well put together.
It has. It's been great, hasn't it? And it's all been down to you since that episode, hasn't it? It's been the Imran show. You've had quite a busy time, haven't you?
Well, I mean, and it's, you'd think that if the residents of Coronation Street actually watched Coronation Street, they might think twice about getting Imran to do anything. His track record ain't great.
Have you got like a technique for learning all your lines when you have so much to do? Because you've had an awful lot to say this past week.
Yeah, it's really boring. It's just repetition. You just with the 2 weeks that we had at the court, there were certain scenes that were short enough or simple enough in terms of just the call and response of it. Like, what I say will make sense, that your response will make sense, which will then make what I say make sense, as they're really easy to learn. And so the stuff that I flagged as kind of problematic were like closing statements, any kind of really lengthy in sort of cross-examination, like the stuff with Asher I remember being really difficult, because it's like he's orchestrating where that conversation is going, or like he needs it to get to that end point, point specific. And if I cock that up, then Tanisha can't rescue me from that. Tanisha can't pick up the slack and redirect the scene, because I'm the one that has to be driving it. So it is literally just sitting alone in either my bedroom where I am now, or out in front of on the green outside my flat, and just putting my head down and just saying to myself, I'm not taking my head from this page until it's in there, and kind of being a bit of a disciplinarian with myself. So it's not particularly interesting or fun, but it's just the way I kind of have to do it.
Is it even more intimidating being in that big courtroom?
In a way it was, yeah, because there's not only the fact that you are on literally a bigger stage, but in terms of the way that the day is structured, there's the whole process of, because we're having to get picked up and taken there. So there's the whole process of getting up, getting into this car, and then driving, and then you've got knowing that this place is coming at you. It's like this sort of anticipation, dread of what's coming. Whereas the stuff with in the court scenes that we've got at the studio, there's a more level of familiarity there, and the kind of ease that comes with that. Whereas this was, we're going to this place, and also because we were under very strict time constraints as well, because we only had that location for the time that we had it, I want to say 3 weeks before some other production moved in. So like, we got to get this, and if we don't, then we ain't got it. We're going to have to build backdrops behind people's heads and shoot everyone in super close up, which will look ridiculously stupid. So it's so it was quite tense, but at the same time, because the thing I've really liked about doing the court stuff, particularly during COVID, is the fact that I get to be big, and I get to be declarative, and I like in a way that you would whether COVID was a thing or not. Yeah. So the fact that it was a bigger space, and I did have more, vertical space to fill, there was something about that I still really enjoyed anyway. Like, a bit like being back on stage.
I was just going to say, just like your theatre days, wasn't it?
Yeah. It wasn't lost on me, the fact that I think I was enjoying that, because I do enjoy that kind of work. I'm pretty sure there is a connection there. But whatever it is, like, I've been enjoying it. I'll continue to enjoy it. So hopefully there'll be, we'll have to see, because who knows how this stuff's going to keep going.
Yeah. So you had this.
I'm trying to be vague because I haven't seen tonight's yet, so I don't know what.
You're doing your summing up. You were great, Charlie. So you had this. It was it's like mid July, was it? You had this. We saw some pictures leaked in the press when you were filming on the steps and everything. It looked pretty hot.
Yeah, that was the 2 weeks we were in Bolton. Were those that stretch of times when the heat wave was going across the nation. So outside, when we were outside, which we were trying to get outside as often as we could, it was between 30 and 35 degrees. And in the court, because for some utterly insane reason, I think because the building is listed, the heating in that building, you cannot turn it off. I think because it's to avoid mold or damp or whatever. So the radiators in that building, whilst it was 35 degrees outside, were blasting at full capacity the entire time. So they did a temperature measurement, one of the Sparks or whoever it was, they just measured the temperature of the courtroom itself, and it was 40 degrees.
Seriously?
So imagine, like, to the point where I'm wearing that wig, as are we all, and my head expanded to the point where not only was it difficult to get off, but it left a kind of Frankenstein scar across my forehead. So it did literally look like a straight line with then a straight horizontal line with vertical lines going across that, like sort of segmenting it. And it was ridiculous. It was absolutely insanity. And then, of course, you've got hair and makeup sort of trying to come over and as gently as possible going, Charlie, could we maybe take you to one side? You look a little hot. And you think?
Oh my God.
I did not receive that news particularly well.
So when you're doing those outdoors bits, and you add all the paps, like when you do your outdoor shoots, do you expect that the press are going to be there? Do you mind?
Well, I find it a little surprising because I find it a little strange that anyone finds me or anything I do of any interest at all. But it wasn't as if there was some sort of like army of people there or anything like that. It was relatively sort of small scale.
Yeah.
I don't know how much how much demand there is for that sort of stuff to begin with. So there are a couple of guys that I have seen before when we've done location stuff, but they are kind of, there is the sort of anticipation there as well where they're kind of readying themselves. It's like a firing squad, and it's like if I'm out in the open for too long, then you can see them sort of raise the barrel of the camera.
Yeah.
And it's like, fire! So I did my best to try and keep myself out of the way as much as I could. But it is unusual because and this is going to sound really counterintuitive, so forgive me if this doesn't make any sense to anybody, but the kind of idea of being watched is really sort of uncomfortable to me. Like, despite the fact that I'm paid to be watched for a living, the idea, there's something about being watched in that sense that I find really unnerving, and I don't particularly like it, and I'll endeavour to avoid any of that sort of attention if I possibly can do. But in that case, it was like, either I can go full Wicked Witch of the West inside this courtroom and just melt into the floor, or I'll have to endure some, photos of me in whatever magazine or newspaper or whatever it is, looking like a total buffoon, which, as it turns out, it did, as my mother was very quick to share with me.
Generates a bit of interest for the story in the show as well, doesn't it? I suppose builds a bit of anticipation.
Possibly, yeah. And I think if it was anybody else, I would completely understand it. But the fact that there are photos of me floating around in that context, I'm just like, who on earth would look at these?
They're only there for Sally Carman, Charlie. I'm sorry to break this to you.
Well, as well they should be.
Award-winning as of tonight. Congrats, Sal.
Yes, I need to offer my congratulations.
So, speaking of filming, what's the latest on social distancing on the set? Because we've seen more scenes recently of certain characters getting up close and personal, but then it's also clear that some of you are still staying apart.
Yeah, it's I want to say it's kind of done on a case-by-case basis at this stage. Like the guys, they're not in the dock. Literally, we've established they're not in the dock, but Paul, Max, Georgia, and Millie, who play the Brents, Toyah, and Kelly respectively, they because they did have to sit in close proximity to one another in that space. There was no way around it. It's story-wise, it kind of had to be done. So each of them were PCR tested, I want to say once or twice a week. I actually can't remember, but it was certainly a number of times a week.
Yeah.
And they created a kind of, they called it a bubble, but it's not really a bubble by any understanding that I have, where they would kind of make sure that they knew where each other had been and that weren't doing anything sort of crazy or that would potentially put the other person in harm's way, all that sort of stuff. And but for the most part, I don't know if it's a cost-saving measure or if it's just a logistics thing. I don't know, but that hasn't really been the case for any of the rest of us. I certainly haven't been asked to do any of that stuff yet, at least. So I don't know. I think it's just a case of script having been written so many months ago.
Yeah.
The kind of hope being that lockdowns would have eased and restrictions would have eased by then, because there were so many various promised dates that never came to pass. And then it's a case of, oh, it's time to film this. Oh, crap! What do we do? And then taking it from there. Like I said, I have no idea really how it all works, but that would seem like a possibility to me.
Yeah, at least you've got a way of doing it which doesn't involve, the actors only being able to, having to move in with each other for 10 days or whatever before filming the scenes.
Yeah.
We've come on since last Christmas.
Yeah, and if it was a different kind of production, then that would be probably the kind of thing you would do. But when it's, an ongoing thing, there are 90 people in the cast, different ages, different levels of sort of social responsibility. There are people that go to school, all that sort of stuff. It's just not feasible. I don't think. I just don't know. There would have been, even if we wanted to do it, I don't think there would have been a way for us to do it that way.
Yeah.
Despite it would have made a lot of people's lives a lot easier, I'm sure. But it's just what can you do? What can you do?
Well, no, it's looking good. I mean, they're able to cover up so much, because I imagine it must have been so difficult with the cast and crew dropouts all the time, people being told to isolate, and Corrie just has to keep on going.
Yeah, and particularly when you've got a major storyline as the trial of Kelly and Corrie has been. If someone that is because it's such a interconnected web which affects so much other stuff, if a kind of major player in all of that, or several, get pinged or fall ill, it can really make things difficult, and it's a testament to the sort of script writers and the schedulers and our ADs, that despite having had lots of people got pinged when stuff started opening up again, and despite not necessarily falling ill themselves, some people did get ill through no fault of their own, I'm sure, and we were able to make it work, and the fact that stuff's being received as well as it is kind of testament to them as much as anybody else in front of the camera, or the people that you would assume when you see a completed episode like that, like the people that actually put the thing together, the logistics of the thing together. It's been an absolute nightmare for those guys. The fact that they've done it boggles my mind.
I know. So I want to come back to this court case in a bit. Let's scroll back to the beginning of the year, or Christmas, when you had that really sweet fostering story with the baby, amongst all the other misery and despair that all the other characters have at Christmas.
We had nice kids once.
You did. How do you think that experience with baby Mason affected Toyah and Imran?
Oh, well, I think they kind of solidified their want to occupy that role, because Toyah certainly had a very difficult time saying goodbye to him when it came to it, and they had to. I think whether it was on screen or not, because a lot of my stuff that I've got going on is headcanon, so I'm not sure. So forgive me if stuff that I'm saying didn't actually make it to air. It might just be what goes on in my head. But I think the reality of saying goodbye to Mason, but whilst also walking away with the knowledge that not only did she make a difference, but also it's a happy sort of quote-unquote memory for him, despite the fact that he wouldn't remember it.
Yeah.
And recontextualizing what it is to be a caregiver and what it is to be responsible for a child. That doesn't necessarily mean that biologically you have to, have a baby in that respect. Like, you can still be maternal, you can still be a carer, you can still be responsible, you can still be a kind of a pillar of sort of trust and support in a kind of context through fostering, and that's something that I feel like got established in that Mason storyline, whether it was on the page or on screen or not. It certainly felt like that to me, and whilst putting it together, and that's what I've got kind of in my head, is like what went on.
Do you think that Imran had really wanted to be, or thought much about being a father before then? Because we'd obviously seen a lot of Toyah's broodiness for years now, but I didn't think Imran had really shown that much of an interest. Do you think that made him realise, I quite like this, actually?
No, wasn't. There actually is a scene that I've pegged as really important, but I don't think it will mean anything to anybody else. There's a scene, I think it's when Kate and Rana have announced their engagement, or they're having an engagement party at the pub, and in the back room, not the back room, the kind of beer garden bit, Imran and Rana are having a conversation about, we'll have kids and you'll grow fat and you'll have an army of little kids or whatever it is. And I say, absolutely not. That is absolutely. And at the time, I don't think he was telling a lie. I think it absolutely was the truth, that there is absolutely no part of him that finds children or their antics or the amount of allowances you have to make in terms of the sacrifices to accommodate for kids, then none of that he found interesting. And I think, again, this is very much headcanon, that once Rana was taken away from him and he kind of, Rana was killed, his dad died, and his mum, I think it's safe to say they've kind of become estranged.
Yeah.
Because of their sort of differences in worldview. And so he doesn't have a family anymore. And so I think the idea of making one with Toyah, they're kind of, again, it's sort of eschewing biology. That's not important. But creating a family to fill that gap that his biological one left, I think that's something that's important to him, something that's part of the reason, I think, why, because I had to sort of find reasons as to why he was so intent on saving Kelly after having looked after her for so little time. And I had to try and make sense of that, out of that, for me, in order to try and make it work. And the thing that I kept coming back to was the fact that she's just like Rana. She's just like Rana. She's strong-willed. She's feisty. The only problem that she has that Rana didn't was the fact that she was born in the wrong family, to the wrong kind of socioeconomic rung on the ladder, and she wasn't afforded the same kind of opportunities, and she was, she had no means of escaping that, and Imran can save her in a way that she couldn't save herself, and that he couldn't save his sister.
Yeah, that makes sense.
I think there's a bit of a sort of possibly hero complex aspect to it as well.
Do you think that we're going to end up getting like a resolution to the Rick Neelan, his death, the factory collapse, while Kelly is under Imran's care?
I don't know. I mean, I honestly don't know. Like that's not me being sort of mysterious and vague. I genuinely only know what they tell me, which is precious little. I think that I feel comfortable saying this because this isn't something I've been told. This is something that I've just inferred. So the fact that you've got Gary, specifically, you've got Gary offering up his savings in order to try and be of support to Kelly, that you've got, a general kind of redemptive arc of the last few years, I think, of Gary Windass. I think to invoke Rick's name in that context might, if that's the direction they're wanting to go, that maybe that will undo that work. I don't know. Maybe it's a total misdirect. Maybe it's a double bluff, and they're setting Gary up to be good again in order to facilitate a fall. So I don't know. I would like to see it, but like I said, I have talked about this before. I don't know if it was with you or not, actually. I can't remember. But Rick's death is one thing, but the whole factory stuff, I think that maybe that will, I don't know if that can get, I don't know if that can get brought up again, can it?
These things have a habit of coming back eventually.
Yeah, that's the thing, but who's getting the justice? Who's the loose end that's getting cut?
Yeah, that's true. Very true. I mean, what do you think Imran would think to know that Rick was dead, considering, everything that's happened? Do you think Imran would be more sad for his foster daughter, or happy that this guy has got some soap justice?
No, I think there would be a real sadness there, because there's again, this definitely was a line. I don't know if it's been cut or if it hasn't aired yet, but there's a line that Kelly has when we talk about her dad, and the kind of establishing sort of fact of that scene is that Laura was this sort of drunk, volatile, quick to anger, quick to her fists, whereas her dad actually, in terms of his relationship with Kelly, was always quite gentle and actually was quite a loving parent. He gave her the kind of advice that a gangster father would, which isn't necessarily great advice for kind of polite society, but in terms of his relationship to her as a father, he actually had a lot of love for her. So if that hasn't been cut and that is actually canon, then that would be enough, I think, for Imran to feel deeply sorry for Kelly, because he knows what it's like to lose someone, even if it is someone in the case of him and Rick that he feels utter contempt for. He knows what it's like to lose people and how hard that is. But he also had the benefit of being an adult when he lost, his most sort of beloved family member in his sister, but she's still just a child. So I think it would be quite cold of him to allow himself to feel hard done by in that situation. That's me speaking there.
Would you say that because you've had to film all these scenes opposite Millie, has that had any impact on how guilty or innocent that you personally think the character is? Because you'll have heard all these people saying, "Oh, throw the book at her," and other people going, "No, it's Corrie, she's innocent, let her walk free." What do you think?
Well, and this is the problem, is that I've always had the benefit of knowing anyway. So I knew from the beginning. But, I mean, in terms of working with Millie, though, there has definitely become I don't want to say fatherly, because I still think it's absurd that I am a father figure to a 17-year-old. I resent that deeply. Storyliners of Coronation Street. But at the same time, no, she is... I do have a huge amount of affection for her, and I think she's, not only is she just an extraordinarily talented person, but she's, just so affable and friendly and lovely and funny, and I think she's got a lot to offer the show, and I think, to be honest, I think Corrie realised that too after they started seeing her work, and I wonder, again, this is something that no one's told me, but I've just inferred. I wonder if this is why we saw the redemptive arc of Kelly to begin with, because initially she was, in a similar but more serious way to Gemma, where she comes in as a sort of thug, child of Satan type thing, and it's like, oh wow, she's actually got a huge amount of depth to her. She's really, really able. She's a wonderful member of a company, and she can make you feel incredibly sorry for her, as we've seen. And to think that, because I don't try and do this, I kind of just do it by default, but seeing what comes up on social media and stuff like that, and how people were so willing to bring back capital punishment when it came to Kelly, and how Millie has done such a good job, and it's not manipulative, I don't think. I think it's as genuine a response as you can give, just by virtue of her being so good and her being so in touch with what that character is going through. I've seen it in real time, people changing their minds.
They have, haven't they?
And feeling more not related, but feeling that she is more relatable in this in the context of what went on. And that's no easy task, because particularly if you've got people literally baying for blood, and Twitter is not known to be a platform where people change their minds easily and admit that they perhaps were a little hasty. But people have been doing it, and that's a testament to Millie.
Yeah, she's been great, hasn't she? It's been interesting. It's been interesting seeing what she's she's made things a little bit more difficult for Imran and Toyah in a way, haven't it? Do you think that it's having a bit of an impact on their relationship?
Imran has been so all encompassed by this situation, by Kelly, his need to care for her and protect her when everybody else has abandoned her, in a similar way to the Rana situation where everyone else walked away. There's a line that he says to, not Shelley, to Yasmin, that you looked after her when everybody else walked away, and that's something clearly that's important to him. And Toyah, she's had connections to the streets her entire life. Well, since she was a child herself, since she was Kelly's age. Yeah. And the idea of becoming pariahs by acting as sort of antagonists to Abby and Kevin and everybody else connected to Seb, that's a really difficult thing for her to have to deal with, and as it would be for anybody. Yeah. And it's because when it gets brought up, it's not a discussion. Like, it is Imran kind of telling her, look, this is what this is, and this is what I'm going to do, and I don't care if people don't like me, I don't care if any of this. And Toya's right to reply almost gets negated a little bit. Yeah. And in terms of how their relationship is affected, like that kind of thing, that kind of single-mindedness, which leads over quite easily into a sense of selfishness, even if he's doing something that he thinks is noble, he's not taking into consideration the people closest to him, that aren't Kelly. Yeah. Namely Toyah. I don't think he's taking the fact that she's in court at all, the fact that she's sat there in the dock, knowing that the eyes of her friends and neighbours are going to be boring a hole into the back of her head. Yeah. And that's, I don't know, no matter how strong it is, especially as far as soaps go,
Yeah, plus we've obviously Sabeen as the spanner in the works as well.
Yeah.
Did you enjoy acting opposite Zora Bishop, who plays Sabeen?
I love Zora. I think she's absolutely brilliant. I think if there was a way to make it work, because I know she's come in as quite an antagonistic role, but if there was a way to make it work, I think she'd be an incredible addition to the show. I think she's so good, and I think they'd be leaving Corrie would be leaving some sort of gold dust on the table if they were to not keep her on beyond what she's got to do. I'm trying to be vague. But I just think she's extraordinary, and she's, again, just such a good person to have around, because the shooting days, they can be tough, particularly if you're in 40-degree heat in a giant, pile of wool and whatever kind of ridiculous hair that wig's made out of. And the fact she made those days easy by just being a great person to have around, just full of energy, full of that, just so that's something, whatever that is, that thing that, makes people want to take notice of you, whatever it is. She's fab, and I've loved our little sort of barbs at each other, our little snipes, our little, sort of verbal boxing matches, these little jabs that we're constantly giving at each other, trying to sort of undermine each other's color. At the same time, I think, or what I certainly was trying to do was have a certain level of fun with it as well, to kind of imply that, I know there is a reason that these two were into each other. Like, they are clearly having fun with each other's company. Not all the time. Like, I didn't want that to just be a constant thing, because I don't know if that would have been a bit distracting or a bit of, maybe not quite appropriate for the story we're trying to tell. But I just think having those kinds of, like, wars of words, whilst also with a little smile, I had a really fun time doing that sort of stuff with her.
Yeah, it's been great. I've really enjoyed it. I think that, you know, all of the main players in this story, fab actors. We had Zora, we've had Sally, we've had Molly, Millie, obviously. Max Evans, isn't he amazing?
Yeah, Max is great, and he's been given almost as hard. I'd say like it's got to be one of the hardest jobs in this line of work, because he's got to be so detestable, but it's so easy to slip into full-on moustache twirling panto villain. You know, be completely reprehensible whilst also not slipping into parody.
Yeah, no, he's been brilliant.
And at no point has he ever done that.
No.
And I just think that's so impressive, and the level of restraint you need to have in order to not do that, I just think it's absolutely phenomenal. And again, he's been a huge asset to the show, having, you know, had not ignoble, but like he came in as just a kind of that guy, like Ash's guy, right?
Yeah, I mean he's been on the show for like at least 2 years now, hasn't he? I can't remember. He's been on it for a while, just as like a real side, you know, nobody of a character almost, and then thrown him into this story this year, and it was like, wow, he's amazing.
Yeah, and he, again, just a huge asset to the show. It makes the rest of us look good when you've got young people coming up through at the start of their careers, excelling in the way that these guys are.
Yeah.
It kind of shows again that Corrie is and has certainly always been just a breeding ground for young talent. Like, you've seen the people that have made their starts on that show and have gone on to become hugely successful elsewhere.
Yeah,
it's kind of a good look for this show.
Yeah, it really is.
Have that legacy of producing young talent like that, and it seems like we've got an absolute embarrassment of riches of it at the moment. Like, we've got across the board, like certainly the most talented actors I've worked with, period, no matter how old or young they are, and they're all at the sort of opening gate of their careers, and to see where they go, whether they stay on the cobbles or whether they move on to other things. It's very exciting to be here at the start. So, you know, literally I can say that I knew them back when, because they're all incredible, really amazing bunch.
Yeah, they're great, aren't they? I mean, it kind of this rejuvenation. It kind of started with Tanisha with Asher's character a few years ago, and it's just got better and better since then. No, we got Adam Hussein as well. It's brilliant. I love it.
Yeah.
I was just going to say, speaking of Asher, did you think that Imran was going a bit too far with her in court the other day, or did you think it was needs must for Kelly?
I think, yeah, I mean, he did go too far if you're taking it at sort of face value, and the effect it had on Asher, of course, would paint what Imran did as a more villainous act, which I don't think it was. I think that because he is literally fighting, you know, bare fist against an army, like, he's got nothing to fight with, and he's grasping at straws, and if he has to sort of stick the proverbial knife in, then it was an act of desperation, I think. I don't think it was I don't think it was the actions of someone that had all their ducks in a row.
Yeah. Right, Charlie, before we finish, I just wanted to talk a little bit about the anniversary week scenes from last year, because they were epic. How did you find that went down? Were you taking Jeff down in court?
Yeah, that was just it was an incredible week, and that's the time working over there that because you do so many of these things that you forget more than you remember sometimes. But that will always be something that I really hold dear, because one, it's one of those rare instances where I don't look at the work that I'm doing and just have a Pavlovian cringe. So that's one. That's point one. And two, again, it was similar to the story that we're in the middle of at the moment. It was just one of the best put together stories that I think Corrie have done, and I think it's a story that only Corrie could tell in that way.
Yeah.
Or certainly only a soap, but I think with the caliber of performers that we've had, I think it's a story that only Corrie could tell. Not every show has a Shelley King.
Very true.
And be a part of it, and the story itself was very meaningful to me, and so to be involved in some small way, to come in at the end of 18 months of work, and to bring that kind of coercive control, be part of the team bringing that coercive control story to the public sphere, to people's attention. That was, it was very meaningful and very cathartic to actually speak to an abuser that way. That was very meaningful to me.
Yeah. No, I loved it. It was some brilliant scenes.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, I'm very proud of it, and I remain proud of it, which is not usual for me. I usually regard most of the work that I do with a pretty healthy level of contempt and a kind of bemusement that I haven't had someone burst through the wall with the "you've been framed" cameras, kind of going, well, what did you think, that you were doing this for a living, that people would hire you, you fool?
You're too modest, Charlie.
No, well, thank you. I should just take the compliment. Sorry, I'm not. Yeah, thank you. That's very nice. Thank you.
So we've got to wrap this up, but I said at the beginning that this year had been a little bit quiet for Toyah and Imran. Without giving too much away, are we still going to be seeing lots more of you on screen as we go into the autumn?
I think it's safe to say that you are, yes.
Excellent.
To the point where everyone's sick of them and want them to go away again. Who's to say?
I can't imagine that.
It won't be the opening months of the year where we had literally fallen off the planet, I think. They, Imran and Toyah had fallen off the planet. I think they had broken COVID rules and gone to Bermuda or something.
Not a veggie lasagna induced coma then.
Oh, that's a good one. Yes, no, that one much better. Not wasted down there, Mark. You need to come up here and do some work for us.
Right, Charlie, we have got to go. We've been chatting ages. I've really enjoyed catching up with you again about this. The story's great, and it's been lovely to be able to speak to someone about how it's all been going down.
It's my pleasure talking to you, and whenever it's nice to be on screen. If for no other reason, that you'll finally actually phone me and ask and talk to me. Because when I'm not on screen, you don't care. You pin me right off.
Well, I'm looking forward to finding out the outcome of this trial on Friday.
And be gentle with me on Twitter, please. And also, I'll wear a wig if I bloody well want to.
You're too right, you do it. Right, nice speaking to you, Charlie. See you next time.
And I'll wear a policeman's outfit too whilst I'm at it. See you later, Michael. Take care now.
Bye. See ya.